Hello there, it's a Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. This week, we're taking a gentle viewer submit question. As always, you can submit your own. Helps if you include a question mark in the comments. Helps me control F for it. Anyway, let's get straight to it. This one is from a gentle viewer whose username should appear somewhere in the bottom third of the screen right about now. And they ask, have you ever considered hosting a guest and conducting an interview? And this may be a little surprising, but actually I have. Just this year, I was even asked if I wanted to do this by, I don't even know how much I can say about this, so I'll be vague enough. But I was asked by a studio, an independent studio, if I wanted to do an interview with a moderately well-known figure, especially in the realm of like Bethesda Game Studios games, and this person has worked on those games in the past, and they have a new project coming out that is in a crowdfunding stage, I think, at the moment. And I was asked if I wanted to interview someone related to that. You could probably, if you have your ear close to the ground, you probably can figure out who this is, especially since a lot of other people were given this offer as well, and they seized that opportunity. But I declined it, actually. I declined it. I don't really regret declining it either, because first and foremost, I'm just not the kind of channel that would interview someone, right? As much as I'm flattered by that offer, this isn't the type of channel that like would draw any type of major audience for something like that. We don't really do interviews. Perhaps more vitally, where I think there would be a ton of crossover, we're not really a channel that covers news, right? We really only get into news whenever I feel like it during these IRL videos and stuff once a week, or sometimes a little bit more. So I don't know that it would necessarily help them out any, and they seem nice enough, right? They seem very, very kind. They seem very good. So off the basis of that, I just don't think it, like, doing an interview, let alone this specific one, but just in general, I don't think it really meshes too well with sort of the nature of the channel, as it were. If we were, like, way more news-focused, covering things that are more topical, right? If we did that on a regular basis, and instead, like, playthroughs were something we did on, like, an alternate channel, or we did playthroughs once a week, and then we did news the entirety of the week, right? In real life videos were the norm, and playthroughs were the sort of standout side example, or whatever you would call it. They were the exception to the rule. That's what I'm looking for. Then maybe that'd be more likely. On the other hand, or in the second case, why I didn't do this, and why I wouldn't do this in the future, I think, I just don't think I'm a very good interviewer. I'm not really a trained reporter in any sense of the word. I don't really have much of an interest in studying interviews and looking into this sort of amount of reporting to be like, okay, what are some good questions and stuff that I can deliver to someone? How can I, you know, if I'm interviewing someone and they're starting to struggle to sort of talk in front of the camera, because, you know, it's not their job to talk in front of a camera. They're busy doing other stuff. They're doing whatever it was that merited them having an interview, right? A good interviewer should be able to sort of direct that, make a point, help out both the interviewee and the audience so that way they can get more information or have fun, right? I often think back to sort of like late night television interviews of yore. Conan O'Brien famously is generally regarded as a pretty good interviewer who will sort of help out his guests who are less well known, sort of help them out if they need, like, I don't know. Of course, he's like a comedian as well, and a lot of his interviews are focused on being funny and sort of like exposing the audience to like whatever their guest was working on, like a movie or a TV show or something like that. And he would help highlight that in a really satisfying way, right? And of course, there's other people who do interviews, like more political ones, more, I don't know, like traditional news reporting and whatnot. And I don't know, it's just not really within my purview. It's not really within my realm of interest, right? And some people would say, well, that makes you the perfect person to do it, right? Some people would say, oh, that means that you don't really have any ulterior motive, you don't have a stake in the game. And I would say, let's take it easy. I think there's plenty of people who do reporting and stuff and like traditional journalism and whatnot, who are absolutely not the devil that a lot of people think that they are, right? I mean, there are certainly some snakes in the grass, right? But I think a lot of questions about like journalistic integrity, especially in video games specifically, is vastly overblown and frankly feels like at this point such an outdated, old school kind of I don't know, criticism. And honestly, it's kind of a red flag for me whenever I see someone start spouting it. I want to get down to like, what do you really mean here, you know? But having said that, I feel like probably with the audience I've fostered, I think with these sentiments, I'm probably at least 90% preaching to the choir. But that's sort of my thoughts on it. Send someone who is better at that, who has more of an interest, who is interested in sort of studying and thinking about sort of the interviewing technique, as it were. And at least I would hope that people who do a lot of interviews on here, who do cover news in that way, I would hope that they think about this. I don't know. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But regardless, definitely something on my mind. This sort of also, with regards to interviewing not being something that I'm interested in and something that I feel like would fit on the channel, this also partially ties into, I think, my hesitance to do a collab, as it were, with someone else. I think I've remarked on this before in the past in a Morrowind annual, but it bears repeating here, I think. I sort of, as a viewer or as a listener, whenever sort of like a news show or even a podcast has on a guest to talk about whatever, I'm always very iffy about it, right? It takes me, speaking as an audience member, it takes me a while to warm up to someone, right? If you're just continually bringing in fresh faces and stuff, I appreciate that, but I wasn't really here for that, you know? I was here for whoever is the focus of the production, as it were, right? I have come to like and appreciate the, like, central figures' mannerisms, their way of speaking, their way of thinking about things, their way of considering things. I appreciate that. So when there's, like, another guest who comes in, especially if they're regularly recurring, or, you know, there's, like, a change of staff, as it were, if like, this is a new permanent co-host, it takes a while to warm up to him, right? It takes a while to be like, okay, I guess I'm okay with you, right? And, you know, sometimes there's just folks who that isn't really their I don't know, realm of expertise. They're not terribly good at. They're good at other things, right? Like we were just mentioning with interviewing. So you run the risk of sort of bouncing off of stuff. That's why I'm always so hesitant to do it, right? I feel like I'm more keen to do stuff like that if I already am sort of aware of that person. I'm like, yeah, I would probably get along well with this person. I feel like I would be able to bounce things off of them in a good enough way that I would be happy with, right? That's, which I think is at the forefront of the argument, that I would be happy with sort of the experience with doing it and whatnot. I think that's sort of the gist of it, right? When it comes to interviewing, sort of collaborating, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's also like a room for someone who covers a lot of mods to sort of like do an interview with a person who works on mods, right? But that said, who's that really for, right? A lot of folks aren't terribly interested in someone who just makes a mod and hearing them out and whatnot, right? When it's so easy to just download the mod and play the mod, right? The work speaks for itself. And at the same time, like I said, a lot of people who just work on these things, their talents are obviously in sort of building the mod rather than doing an interview, so a lot can go wrong. And so I don't sort of hold it against anybody who's like, I don't know if I want to do this, right? And I think maybe you're right to make that call, right? You know yourself better than anybody, I would say. But I think that's sort of the gist of it. It's just not really within the purview of the channel, and it's just not really something that I have personally an interest in. Like I said, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the audience and to the interviewee by not having a lot of stakes in it, right? By not being like, oh yeah, I'm an interviewer guy. I like to interview people. I got a lot of questions. That way it doesn't feel like this is droning on for hours and hours. We're talking and just shooting the shit here about something that's mostly irrelevant to their project or to the audience, right? Something that they don't really care about. I don't know. I feel like there should be some type of standard, and there are folks who uphold a certain standard and whatnot, right? And as well, I think you run into issues with sort of when it comes to interviews, when it comes to this kind of reporting and stuff, wherein someone who just makes videos on YouTube, there's nothing really keeping me in check, right? And you could just run away with a bag of money and give something sort of like a glowing review or a glowing interview, right? You could give like softball questions and whatnot, as it were. Like if it's something of a controversial topic or project that whoever is working on it, right? You could just avoid the controversial questions and just talk about stuff that gasses up the project real quick. Similarly, you don't want to be an a-hole, right? You don't want to be horrible to someone who isn't really deserving of it, right? If you're doing punching, you want to make sure you're punching up rather than down. Like I said, there's sort of an art and technique to it, and I think something that a lot of folks these days, and this sort of ties back into the parasocial video that we had done, the parasocial relationship video, when it comes to sort of these like creator-made, influencer-made videos and stuff, where speaking more directly to the audience, I think we tend to have a propensity to trust them when we maybe shouldn't, right? When we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, how shady or not someone may be, not even with regards to them being just like having shady morals or character, right? Their caliber of their being or whatever, but also just like their business practice, right? Wherein they're sort of, they choose to take money from so-and-so or whatever, and like I said, give a glowing interview, or there's a conflict of interest with where they're getting, for instance, like a sponsorship spot, or something that feels a little bit disingenuous or whatever. Like, I don't know, for instance, I've dunked on like Temu or Shein sort of sponsorships and stuff in the past, and I can't lie, if I'm watching or listening to something where they're like, oh, this segment is sponsored by one of those companies, I'm gonna be rolling my eyes. I'm gonna be like, wow, I've lost a little bit of faith in this. I thought we were a little bit better than doing this, taking money from Satan, right? I thought we were doing a bit better here. I thought this was a reputable joint, but I don't know. I think these are all things to factor in. Like I said, I think there's a propensity to trust someone doing videos like this. And I think in that way as well, like I said, within the realm of more businessy stuff, it's sort of taken advantage of, right? There is very little in the way of critique for people, I don't know, who talk into a camera sort of like me, but are delivering what is effectively reporting. They are a journalist, right? Not informalities, not within the realm of being a formal journalist or whatever, a reporter, but they are basically doing that, right? And there's nothing keeping them in check and saying like, oh yeah, there's like a group of, I forget what it's called, the Order of Journalistic Integrity or whatever, wherein you can get, I don't know, barred from it or something like that. But there's nothing like that behind the scenes or anything. That there's no like, you're basically going off a scout's honor, and probably the scouts have more honor than that even, I would say. It's something to beware of, right? It's something that I'm wary of, certainly, and just as well, right? Even someone like myself in this case. Well, of course, if I were doing anything shady, if I wanted to start wheeling and dealing, doing something messed up, of course I'm gonna say like, yeah, check out these other people. Me? I'm one of the good ones, right? Of course I'm gonna say that. Of course I'm gonna say that. So don't make that as well, someone lampshading it as in totality, something that's sort of, I don't know, contributes to their own, I don't know, scruples, something that sort of implies like, oh, this person won't steer me wrong, you know? Because they might, right? Especially when it comes to, like I said, in this realm of sort of, I don't know, self-made reporters, self-made journalists and stuff like that. I think a lot of people get sucked in by stuff like that. And I think we're starting to see as well, a lot of folks starting to notice like, oh, this person very clearly took money to do a relatively good review of this game, or they got early code for this game in order to do a good review of it, or, oh, they were promised an interview for this game before it came out in a sort of pre-release area, because obviously this is a hot game coming out. Of course, if you're going to interview whoever the heck this is, they're going to get some mad clicks. So afterwards, the people who gave them the interview are like, well, you're gonna glaze up the review that comes out, right? Your review video, you got to glaze that up a little bit. We gave you some pretty good access here, pal. So, you know, there's a conflict of interest. It's something to be interested and worried about, right? And like I said, I think as it stands, a lot of people perhaps are wrongly, I would say, too prone to scrutinizing older traditional like review media, and too prone to giving way too much like leniency toward this newer form of it, right? And certainly there's instances where it goes where there's like exceptions to that. But I think overall, generally speaking, with like the general tone and vibe, I feel like I don't know, it's gone too far in one way or the other, and you're setting yourself up for being taken advantage of by by a system that being, like I said, people talking into a camera, doing interviews, doing reviews and stuff like that, who have nothing to check them, right? There's no series of checks and balances. On the one hand, that can be fun and whatnot, and that it's difficult to get any sort of check or balance initiated, but I don't know, it's a who is watching the Watchmen sort of situation, right? Who's making sure that these people are maintaining some degree of integrity. I don't know. Sorry, this is spinning out of control into a bit of another topic that is sometimes on my mind, especially recently, sort of with information getting out about sort of, I don't know, getting access to games in certain fashions or another, and there being like content creator guidelines that otherwise would not fly with a more traditional form of media coverage, right? But content creators are sort of exploited in this way, right? Because make no mistake, in some way they too are also, or can also be a victim of this, or can be a victim, in that, you know, oh, obviously you're a content creator or you're an influencer or whatever jargon you prefer. We're going to squeeze you, right? We're going to offer you this nugget of access, but we're going to really restrict you in a certain way, right? And like I said, thankfully, we have instances, like I said, very, very recently, with regards to, well, what is it? Wukong, I think it is, where a lot of people just saw something fishy and they just blew it up. And now a lot of people are aware of, like, the sort of weird stipulations that were sent out in this sort of creator collaboration program or whatever. So now a lot of people, it's just like a well-known story. It got reported on. Generally, I would say a decent enough way to handle the situation. Probably not perfect, but decent enough. Making do within the system that you're given. But I feel like, you know, that's the one that went well, right? If anything, this should highlight how susceptible this new system is to manipulation, you know, to even subtle versions of it. Not so obvious as, like, I'll give you a big bag of money with a $sign on it to get your sway, to get you to glaze up our new product. But like I said, more subtle stuff, like, we gave you some access. Come on, give us a bit more of a, glaze us up a little bit with this game that just came out. Come on, stuff like that. And then, you know, like, weeks later, maybe the same creator or whatever, they have to backpedal a bit on their views. And, you know, everybody makes mistakes, but if it keeps on happening, right, I don't know. Like I'm saying, there's nothing keeping this in check. The only check and balance for sort of this, I don't know, creator ecosystem is the viewer, right? And the viewer themselves are in a position to be manipulated, like I mentioned with regards to something like a parasocial relationship or whatever, right? I don't think anyone would necessarily blame you if you fell prey to that, right? I mean, sure, in the moment, someone would be like, what an idiot, right? But they're sort of from the outside looking in. But, of course, if we get down to brass tacks and we really look at the situation, there's a lot of manipulation going on. Anyway, wow, this really, man, this question really went places. I thought that this would be a quick one. But, wow, we covered a lot of ground here. I guess that ought to do it for now. Holy cow, before I spin this out into something even more so. Yeah, we'll cut it here for now. I think that's probably a good idea. Is that it? I think that's it, right? We'll have another one of these next week. As always, feel free to submit your own question. It gets added to my ever-growing, what's it called? Not Microsoft Word, the free one. Open Office, I think. It gets added to my big Open Office file, right? All right. Until next time, please take care of each other.